You are not here tonight to protect the emperor from his many enemies outside the palace walls. You are here instead because he might not survive until dawn. Rome in the year 192 now lies under the iron rule of Commodus, an emperor who genuinely believes himself the reincarnation of Hercules made flesh. Somewhere inside these marble corridors, a quiet conspiracy is already forming among the very people who are sworn, above all others, to keep the emperor breathing until morning. Tonight, you walk the halls as Atticus, a veteran of the Germanic frontier now serving his second year inside the most feared and privileged unit in the empire. By sunrise, you will have stood perfectly motionless through an imperial banquet, screened senators for hidden blades, and guarded a bedchamber where a single soft footstep could mean betrayal. History remembers Commodus mainly as a gladiator emperor, but few people today remember that more Roman rulers were killed by their own bodyguards than by any foreign enemy. So as the torches gutter low in the Castra Praetoria tonight, one simple question follows you through every single corridor. Who exactly are you protecting the emperor from? This is the true, hidden story of the Praetorian Guard, Rome's most trusted protectors and most dangerous traitors, and the single night that decided an entire empire's fate. 4 long hours before dawn, the Castra Praetoria slowly stirs awake, a walled fortress of brick and stone built specifically and carefully to house Rome's most privileged fighting force. Not every legionary ever really earns a place here. Recruiters favor men from Italy itself, tall, free-born, and already proven through many long, hard-won years of frontier service. Selection alone is never quite enough. A Praetorian serves 12 full years instead of the legionary's usual 16, yet the pay and prestige make every risk truly worthwhile. Under Nero, a Praetorian earned 3.5 times a legionary's ordinary wage, and every new emperor quickly added a donativum bonus worth several full years' salary. You learn quickly enough that this money is not simple generosity at all. It is the steep price an emperor pays to keep the men guarding his own life loyal. This early morning, you carefully strap on the lorica segmentata, banded steel plates hinged carefully over both shoulders, heavier and far more ornate than any ordinary legionary's armor. Your own oval shield bears the scorpion emblem of the guard, more rounded and far more heavily reinforced than the rectangular scuda carried by the ordinary regular legions. A tall, crested helmet, its purple horsehair rising high above the brow, marks you out instantly as a Praetorian to every citizen who passes through the crowded forum. Some veteran cohorts still proudly wear lion-skin capes over their armor, an old badge of honor grown so very heavy with decorations that marching itself becomes a burden. At the 8th hour of the previous afternoon, the Tesserarius quietly handed down today's watchword, a single, simple word that separates friend from intruder inside the entire palace. Forget that single word tonight, or say it half a second too slowly, and even a fellow guardsman may treat you instantly as a threat to be cut down. Formation now complete, the cohort marches out through the gates of the Castra Praetoria and along the busy Vicus Longus, iron sandals striking cold stone in unbroken rhythm. Ahead rises the great Palatine Hill, crowned by palace roofs of gold-flecked tile, the private, hidden world of an emperor who now proudly calls himself the Roman Hercules. Word moves quietly through the ranks today that Commodus plans to enter the arena himself once more, a spectacle the entire Senate views with silent, deeply simmering rage. You receive your formal assignment for the day. The Palladium itself, the highest honor a Praetorian can ever earn, and by far, the most dangerous post of all. Ordinary legionaries only dream of the frontier's booty. You have already learned that the real fortune in Rome is made close to the throne, not out on the battlefield. A grizzled centurion pulls you aside before the gates and mutters that the Senate has never truly forgiven Commodus for renaming Rome after himself, city and month alike. Remember well, the old centurion mutters quietly. You don't just guard his body tonight. You also guard the illusion that he is loved, before falling back into formation. The great gates of the Palatine swing slowly open, and for the first time today, you step from the world of soldiers into the strange world of gods. Noon slowly arrives and you quickly take your post beside the entrance to the grand imperial reception hall tonight. Spear grounded, eyes forward, body utterly and deliberately motionless. To the senators filing slowly past in their togas, you are mere furniture. To the guards' officers, you are their eyes and ears inside every single conversation in Rome. The Praetorians are not merely simple bodyguards. Under Commodus, they quietly function as something closer to a secret police, watching senators closely the way hunters watch wounded prey. Some of your own brothers in the guard quietly trade their armor for plain togas, the disguise called togatus, and vanish into the crowded city streets to listen. They sit quietly in wine shops, linger near the busy forum steps, and report back any whisper that sounds like treason against the very man on the throne. Commodus trusts almost no one completely anymore, and his suspicion has only deepened since a bloody conspiracy years earlier nearly ended his own life inside this very palace. That plot, in the year 182, was led by his own sister Lucilla, who resented watching her younger brother rule the empire she felt was hers. An assassin suddenly lunged at Commodus in a dark corridor, shouting that the Senate itself sent this blade. But the strike missed, and the plot collapsed within hours. Lucilla was quickly exiled and later executed, and Commodus emerged from that betrayal fully convinced that danger could come from absolutely anyone at all, even his closest blood relations. That one single failed dagger reshaped the guard's entire purpose, turning you slowly from soldiers who fight foreign wars into watchmen who monitor Rome's own restless ruling class. By midday, the emperor slowly moves toward the banqueting hall, and you fall silently into position along the wall, one statue among a dozen identical statues in armor. A young servant weaves nervously between the couches, refilling cups too quickly, carefully avoiding eye contact with the guard stationed only a few paces from the emperor's reclining seat. You note it silently, exactly the way you have been trained to note everything, filing the servant's odd behavior away without moving so much as a single finger. Two senators lean close together near the far stone wall. Their voices drop so low that even standing this close, you can only catch faint fragments of Latin. One single phrase reaches you clearly: the list, followed by a name you do not recognize, before the senators notice you and straighten quickly with false, practiced smiles. In this unnatural quiet, even the senators' faintest whispers seem to carry an edge, each murmured syllable landing on your ear like the slow sharpening of a blade. Your careful training tells you to remember faces, not act on fragments, because a Praetorian who arrests the wrong senator can quickly end his own career, or his life. Commodus himself lounges lazily at the very center of the hall, dressed more like a champion of the arena than a true and rightful ruler of the known world. He has already fought hundreds of wild beasts this season alone in staged hunts, and boasts openly that he is Hercules reborn, favored directly by the gods themselves. The entire Senate despises this display of a Roman emperor performing as a common gladiator, but no one ever dares say so within earshot of the Praetorian Guard. As the long banquet finally winds slowly down, you realize the real danger tonight will not come from outside the palace walls, but from somewhere much closer still. 14 hours into your watch, fatigue has become a dull ache behind your knees and across your shoulders, but your eyes must stay as sharp as your gladius. Night finally falls quietly over the Palatine, and you are quickly reassigned to the innermost post, the long corridor leading directly to the emperor's own private sleeping chamber. This entire part of the palace, the Domus Augustana, was built specifically to isolate the emperor, layer after layer of quiet courtyards separating him from the outside world. Every single door you pass tonight requires the watchword given at the 8th hour, and you have already memorized it so completely that it feels exactly like breathing. Torches flicker steadily along the cold marble walls, throwing shadows that shift with every draft, turning familiar hallways into something much closer still to a labyrinth after dark. Somewhere far below, in rooms reserved for his closest circle, Commodus is being quietly attended by Marcia, the mistress who has shared his bed for nearly a decade. Marcia is truly no ordinary concubine. She reads state reports, influences key appointments, and has quietly protected many Christians in Rome from persecution during Commodus's increasingly erratic reign. Beside her quietly stands Eclectus, the palace chamberlain, and Quintus Aemilius Latus, the Praetorian prefect himself, both powerful men who technically outrank every single guard standing watch tonight. You do not know it yet, standing quietly at your lonely post, but these three people alone will ultimately decide whether the emperor sees tomorrow's sunrise at all. Earlier tonight, Commodus suddenly announced a plan to begin the new year not in imperial purple, but marching from the gladiator barracks dressed instead as a common fighter. Marcia begged him repeatedly not to disgrace the office of emperor this way, and Commodus, enraged by her objection, stormed angrily off toward his own private chambers alone. From your post you hear raised angry voices, then silence, then the faint scratch of a stylus on wax, though you cannot see what exactly is being written. What none of you can see is Commodus compiling a private wax tablet, a pugilares, listing names marked for execution at dawn, beginning with Marcia, Eclectus, and Latus. A young servant boy later finds that same wax tablet resting beside the bath, and without understanding its true weight, carries it quickly straight into Marcia's waiting hands. She reads her own name among the condemned names, and within only minutes is standing before Eclectus and Latus, with the tablet trembling badly in her own fingers. The three of them quietly agree, in whispers you cannot hear from your corridor, that only one of them can truly survive the coming morning. Themselves, not the emperor. You notice nothing unusual at first, only that Marcia soon quietly returns to Commodus's side, carrying his usual evening cup of wine with her hands slightly unsteady still. Commodus drinks deeply, as he always does after bathing, blindly trusting the hand that pours it far more than he ever trusts any hidden blade in the palace. Within only moments he is doubled sharply over, vomiting violently, and for one long, terrifying instant, it seems the poison meant to end him has failed utterly and completely. Eclectus, watching quietly from the shadowed doorway, instantly realizes that a failed poisoning now means a furious, deeply suspicious emperor. And furious emperors almost never forgive so easily. There is simply no more time for whispered plans. Someone must quickly finish what the wine could not, before Commodus recovers enough to call loudly for the guard. This would certainly not be the first time the Praetorian Guard alone decided the fate of an emperor with their own bare hands rather than some enemy's blade. In the year 41, guardsmen conspired with senators to murder Emperor Caligula in a palace corridor, then dragged his terrified uncle Claudius from hiding and declared him emperor instead. The Senate, powerless without an army of its own, had no real choice but to formally ratify a decision made entirely inside the walls of the Castra Praetoria. In the chaotic year 69, remembered as the year of 4 emperors, the Guard quickly abandoned Emperor Galba after he refused flatly to pay their promised donativum. Galba was brutally cut down in the Forum itself, and the Guard's favored candidate, Otho, quickly bribed his way onto the throne within a short matter of days. Decades later, after the Guard brutally murdered Emperor Pertinax for trying to tighten discipline, they did something almost unthinkable. They openly auctioned the entire empire to the highest bidder. A wealthy senator named Didius Julianus quickly outbid every rival and briefly became Emperor of Rome, purchased outright by the very same men sworn to protect the throne. He lasted only 66 short days before rival armies marched on Rome, and the Senate itself quickly voted to have him executed inside his own former palace. Every emperor ever since has understood this uncomfortable truth. The men in segmented armor guarding his own door hold far more power over his life than any senator. That is exactly why the donativum exists at all. Not simple generosity, but pure survival money, paid again and again to keep loyalty from quietly curdling into betrayal. It is exactly why new emperors parade before the Castra Praetoria within days of taking the throne, publicly courting the very men who could just as easily end them. Commodus himself understood this bargain far better than most, doubling and redoubling payments to the Guard throughout his own reign, already defined by deep paranoia and lavish excess. Yet money alone was never truly a fully permanent solution, because loyalty bought with coin can always, eventually, be quietly purchased away by someone else entirely offering more. Standing alone in your corridor tonight, you slowly begin to understand a colder truth. The Guard does not merely serve the emperor, it also silently, constantly judges him. And an emperor who ever fails that private, unspoken judgment rarely survives long enough to see exactly how the future history books will describe his own troubled reign. Back in the darkened imperial chambers, Eclectus quietly makes the decision alone. The poison has already failed, and only a swifter method will finish exactly what tonight demands. He quietly sends word for a young athlete named Narcissus, Commodus's own wrestling partner, a man trusted enough to enter the emperor's own private bath without any suspicion at all. Narcissus has spent many long months training beside Commodus, sparring with him for hours, learning the exact rhythm of his breathing and the true limits of his strength. No ordinary assassin could ever walk this close to the emperor unquestioned, but a trusted wrestling partner summoned for a late massage raises no real alarm at all. You, standing watch 2 full corridors away, hear nothing at all unusual, only the familiar sound of the bath attendants moving between rooms as they do most nights. Inside, Commodus lies badly weakened from vomiting, his strength already draining steadily away from the poisoned wine, when Narcissus quietly enters and locks the heavy chamber door behind him. What happens next lasts only a few short minutes. Narcissus seizes the emperor firmly by the throat and strangles him in the bathwater before he can even call out. Some ancient accounts place the killing in his own bed rather than his bath, but every single version agrees on one key detail. Commodus never called for his guard. That total silence is truly the entire point of the conspiracy. The very men sworn to protect him were never meant to hear any struggle at all tonight. By the time you and your fellow guardsmen finally learn what has happened, the Emperor of Rome has already been dead for the better part of a full hour. Latus, the Praetorian prefect himself, appears in the corridor with Atticus at his side, his expression eerily calm in a way that instantly unsettles every single soldier present. He announces simply and calmly that the Emperor has died suddenly of illness. A strange story none of the guards fully believe, but none even dare openly question either. As Praetorian prefect, Latus commands your absolute total obedience, and questioning him tonight would mean directly questioning the very chain of command that pays and fully arms you. Within just hours, Latus and the Guard's senior officers have already quietly agreed on a replacement. Pertinax, an elderly senator known widely for discipline and old-fashioned military virtue. You march at dawn to formally escort this new emperor to the Castra Praetoria, uncertain whether you are witnessing true justice or simply another palace coup in progress. Pertinax immediately tries hard to restore old discipline among the Guard, cutting the bloated donativum payments that Commodus had used for many years to buy your own loyalty. The men around you grumble openly in the crowded barracks that night, comparing Pertinax quite unfavorably to an emperor who, whatever his flaws, always paid generously and on time. You slowly begin to understand, standing among your resentful brothers, that the very same system built to protect emperors can just as easily be turned back against them. 86 long days after Commodus's death, that resentment finally boils over, and the Guard storms the palace again, this time killing Pertinax inside his own throne room. What follows is chaos. The empire is auctioned to the highest bidder, rival generals march on Rome, and the year 193 earns its grim name. Historians will later simply call it the Year of the Five Emperors. 5 different men claiming the throne within a single chaotic year of assassination and civil war. You slowly realize, looking back on that single December night, that the poison Marcia poured and the hands Narcissus used were only ever the visible ending of it. The true cause ran far deeper. An emperor who trusted his own guards so very little that he wrote their names on a list meant for their deaths. In the end, it was not a foreign enemy who truly ended Commodus's reign, but the exact same people history had always taught every emperor to fear most. For nearly 3 more long centuries after this single night, the Praetorian Guard continued quietly making and unmaking emperors, a shadow government wearing the uniform of loyal soldiers. Some emperors even tried hard to tame them, moving loyal legions closer to Rome or creating rival guard units to balance the Praetorians' dangerous influence over the throne. Nothing ever fully worked, because the fundamental problem was never really solved. An armed force stationed permanently right beside absolute power will eventually always decide to use it. In the year 312, the Emperor Constantine finally ended the entire experiment, decisively defeating a rival backed by the Guard at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. Constantine finally disbanded the entire Praetorian Guard entirely and ordered their old fortress at the Castra Praetoria demolished, erasing 3 full centuries of privilege in a single decree. Their old duties passed to a new palace guard drawn from distant provinces, deliberately kept without any deep roots in Rome or personal loyalty to any single faction. Historians still debate today whether the Praetorians were ultimately protectors corrupted by power or simply Rome's own honest mirror, reflecting exactly just how fragile imperial authority truly was. Every single emperor who ever trusted them completely eventually learned the very same hard lesson Commodus did, often far too late to change his own dark, waiting fate. Power, it turns out, is never truly safe in hands paid to guard it, because in Rome the line between bodyguard and executioner was often just who held the tablet. That is the real, true story hidden beneath the armor and the legend. Not simple loyalty, but a fragile bargain that could be broken in a single night. If this whole journey into the Praetorian Guard's world of loyalty, betrayal, and imperial paranoia gripped you, please hit like and subscribe for even more true Roman history. Thank you so very much for spending this whole hour inside ancient Rome with us. We will see you again soon with another story the Empire never forgot.